Welcome to Night Shadows. I'm Stuart Best, where the paranormal is normal, where that which you thought you knew, you didn't, and where the future can be known if you know exactly where to look.
Well, good evening, everybody, and we're going to do an update here with our good friend Larry Taylor, and there's so much news going on, it's kind of hard to figure out where to start. We've got earthquakes, we got volcanoes going off, we have assassination attempts, we have war rumbles that are growing all the time, we have North Korea exploding another nuke. We have all kinds of interesting goodies that are going on, and it looks more like the children of planet Earth are going to ignite the nuclear matches, but we'll get into a lot of that stuff. Hi, Larry. How are you doing tonight?
Hello, Stuart. Good to be back with more news. Lots of news.
There is. Tremendous amount. Where do you want to start with this thing? I've got a thing here that says Assange, the guy with WikiLeaks, narrowly misses assassination. They already killed his lawyer back in August 26, 2016. Now, what is going on with all these assassination attempts? I'd like to mention to everybody, though, that Native American prophecy, and I've got to look it up and find out where it is, but I did read it, and it says that assassinations were going to begin, and that not only was government leaders probably trying to assassinate each other, but they would begin to assassinate citizens who were making too much noise. And evidently the citizens began to figure out, well, if they're going to try and do us, we'll just do them instead. And it sort of gets out of control. What's this about anyway? Larry, you've been following the Putin attempt as well.
Yeah, it's really interesting. Recently, of course, Assange lawyer. Of course, we also had Assange talking about this DNC official that was killed in Washington D.C. We had that killing, and it wasn't robbery. I mean, he was shot and killed, and that was right after some of the information came out, leaked out of the DNC, and then Julian Assange, I'll say his whole name so people will know him, and he's been hiding in the Ecuadorian embassy there in London for some time now, with everybody wanting him, and recently his lawyer was also mysteriously killed. And then they had someone tried to breach the wall, and I think actually got over the wall into the Ecuadorian embassy and got into it with the guards there, and they said that was an attempt assassination of Assange. And then also there was a recent that barely made it to the news at all, except over in Europe. There was a attempted assassination on Angela Merkel, the German president, that occurred, and of course in America, none of this is news in America hardly. But then again, the most recent public one is the one talking about, Vladimir Putin, the president of Russia, and there's a really interesting report from InfoWars. It says update. I'll read it, and then we'll go into talking about it.
Yeah, go ahead.
Putin's favorite chauffeur killed in mysterious accident in Moscow, exactly as former CIA director described in TV news. And what they're talking about, there's a video on Infowars.com of the former acting director of the CIA, Mike Morrell, describing an assassination of Putin in exactly this way. And then, of course, there's another post out today and a video of information claiming that there were warnings about the attempted assassination on Putin. and possibly that was why he didn't go in the car. Now, I actually saw some data and some photographs that showed that was Putin's favorite car. It was his personal car. The chauffeur was driving it, but generally, and I saw photographs of this. Generally, Putin kind of does a Putin kind of thing. And, whether it's wrestling alligators or, riding horses or not even wearing a shirt. But, I saw some photographs where Putin generally drove his own car and the chauffeur rode. And so, but this is interesting. This was a multi-lane road in Moscow, and that other car literally had to come over going the wrong way at 95 miles an hour to hit Putin's car head on. Now, what is the odds of that?
Well, that would have to be a deliberate, willful. Somebody was giving him directions where the car was, and the lanes were perfect. He didn't have to go, one lane over?
Yeah.
And obviously was able to jump the meridian to get into the other lane of other traffic going the other way.
Well, this is the kind of stuff, Stuart, that you see on the Bourne movies, that kind of thing, Jason Bourne. And
yes.
What's ironic, though, this really is, and I can say this because I stayed in a Holiday Inn one night and I've read a number of Tom Clancy novels, so I can really say this, that this is some of the ways of assassinations that do occur throughout time, by whether it's the GRU or the FSB or whatever you want to call them now, or the Mossad or the CIA. I could name a number of agencies, but this is the method. Because they love the accidents, and it reminds me so much too of the late not the Queen of England, but the Princess of England, that was killed in that.
Oh, Diana.
Really, yeah, Princess Diana's car wreck, which was so odd, and all of this though, like you said, these are later on you begin to find some dots to put together that these were really a formulated thing. These were assassinations or assassination attempts, and in this case, some of the reports stated that there was a few days warning about an attempt on Putin, and he didn't get in the car.
Mm-hmm. So somebody forewarned him. He knew about it. It's kind of like Netanyahu was forewarned by the Bible codes. Do you know if anybody's run a Bible code on this, on Putin?
No, they haven't. Yeah, they haven't that I know of. But, there was the one by Michael Drosnin, the original Torah or Bible code information from those early books, before they really got into the Torah codes that much. That warning, they went to actually, Netanyahu wasn't listening, Benjamin Netanyahu, and that was when his first term was, he was prime minister. And they had to go to his dad, who intervened and stopped him and actually stopped that one. However, there's been another one. Recently we reported it on one of your updates that they had to change a route, and there was something that happened with an assassination attempt in Kenya, over in Africa. And so this is ongoing. This has been going on for like 6 months or more in some of the more recent ones, just the last month or two.
Well, the prophecies that I was speaking of earlier, it tend to indicate this gets out of control. So evidently, and does that not prove also that Putin evidently is not playing fair as far as the rich men are concerned? And does that not prove that he is, as we have, and you particularly have said, he's a wild card? Maybe uncontrollable.
Yeah, I think that we're probably being accurate there. I think that Putin is not going by the playbook. I've actually seen, because I follow Russian news pretty close, and I'm not saying all the Russian news is accurate. Of course, there's a lot of propaganda, but there's a number of reported enunciations by Putin as a government official, as a president, that he is not going down the economic New World Order plan with Russia. They are going to bypass the plans of the what we call the rich men. And, of course, that puts him in a very vulnerable position because, it's pretty hard not to play that game. Everybody else in the world pretty much is playing that game. Now, the only other one that will not play the game well either is Benjamin Netanyahu. And, this is and, of course, now the wild card, as you mentioned it, Donald Trump. We're in very dangerous territory here in the U.S. because Trump apparently is not playing. He's certainly not playing the rich man's card, and this is getting very complicated. As I've said before, Stuart, and let me get your opinion on this. I do believe that the rich men have committed too much now to turn back or delay anymore. They've got to go with their program and their agenda.
Oh, absolutely. I don't see how they can turn back. They are fully committed unto death, and they're going to do whatever it takes to get it done. And according to the scriptures, I guess they do. Now, you were talking about Putin and not playing by the deck of cards. If I remember right, did he not say we are not going to mark our people? There's not going to be a mark given to our people. We're not going to be chipped. It seems to me I remember reading that remark some time ago where he kind of indicated we're not going to do that.
Yeah, that was probably, I want to say it was almost a couple of years ago. Now, the report that he gave where they're not going, that his government is not, they're not getting out of cash. In other words, they're not going digital is what he's saying. And they're going to have their own monetary system and remain with it. And he's bucking the economic plan. But I believe you're right. I believe maybe a couple of years ago or even less maybe, he did make a statement that that his people wasn't going to be marked.
Wow. Well, of course, that is, in case everybody that's listening doesn't fully grasp where we're headed. There is a definite war on cash that's going on around the world, and as we just said, Putin evidently is not going to play ball on that one. But the war on cash is designed because cash is your last vestige of privacy. I mean, I can go to someone and buy a product, a car, or whatever, and I can pay him cash, and the computer system doesn't know that. And therefore, that little loophole has to be plugged. So they have to get rid of cash, and that is why you're seeing this clamp down on cash. And, of course, this is leading at the same time they're clamping down on cash, they're bringing up the digital system. And they're talking about biologicals and, we've had all these leaks in credit cards from all the major companies. Oh, we've got to tighten up surveillance. We've got to do this. We've got to do that. But all of it is leading to positive identification, and there's only one way ultimately to do it, right, Larry? You put it in your hand or you put it in your forehead. And I do remember a movie. What was the name of that? Stallone played in it, and Snipes. What's his name? He's a really good actor. I can't think of his name now. But anyway, in that movie, he actually literally cut off a guy's hand so he could get the mark on his hand so he could get into a building. But all of this is, remember that? So all of this is really headed one way. It's headed to total and complete surveillance. And I just wanted to kind of mouth off there a little bit for people that are really skeptical that this is going to happen in America. Yes, it is going to happen. There's no question. The Bible is very, very clear. This happens. And it's accelerating, I think. So this attempt on Putin, has there been any remark from him, any news anywhere about his reaction? I think I know what my reaction would be, but I don't know about him.
No, there hasn't been any at all. However, you probably can expect some, probably payback mysteriously in a short time somewhere else in the world. I think we're going to hear of a mysterious leader's death somewhere, and if like you said, and I want to say those were Hopi prophecies that you were talking about, but I can't remember.
I think
exactly.
They are. Yeah, I think they are Hopi.
Yeah, I do expect probably there will be payback, because that's kind of how he is. And what's interesting, though, is now I wanted to share this real quick. Some very interesting news was released by the State Department through Fox News late this evening. And now how accurate it is and whether it's going to work, I don't know. But they claim that Kerry and Lavrov, which is the U.S. and Russia, have made an agreement to a Syrian peace deal, a Syrian treaty that is to begin, I believe, at sundown on Monday, if all goes according to plan. Now, it would be interesting to me, Stuart, to see if there's a split up a little bit of territory between maybe Turkey and Iran and maybe the U.S. a little and Russia and Assad. And it's going to be interesting to see if this plays out. Of course, from what I'm hearing, a lot of these groups, these Syrian rebel groups, ISIS, all of this other is not involved particularly. So nobody thinks this is going to work very long if it even does. So that's kind of where we seem to be at the moment.
So I know there was a plan to divvy up Syria. And if you go into your prophecies, Syria does not exist or is not named in Ezekiel 38:39. So evidently something happens to Syria or Damascus, we could say, in Isaiah chapter 17. So when they go after that, it evidently eliminates Syria as a viable entity, which then, because of Putin's moves in establishing of military bases there, and did you not say or read somewhere that NATO is in agreement now with what Turkey's doing?
Oh, absolutely. That's what was shocking. That came out this morning, and I posted it today. I was looking for my notes here because it actually named the NATO Secretary General. He actually came out and made the statement that indicated that NATO was in agreement with the Turkish military incursion into Syria. And by the way, this morning the Israeli press is reporting, Devkafile, that the Turkish invasion they've actually set up a region. They call it a security zone on the Turkish border, and they say that Turkey now has acquired and has under military control over 4,000 square kilometers. And NATO now has come out agreeing with that, saying that they approve of it. So, now at the same time, Turkey's wanting also to put a no-fly zone in that region. But I haven't heard any comments from anyone on that yet or going that far. But apparently Erdogan has seized some of northern Turkey and is holding on to it militarily. And by the way, I don't know if you saw some of the video. I saw some video today that are showing Turkish tank trains are moving hundreds of tanks towards the Syrian border. So this incursion may actually be laid out to do more than what we've heard thus far.
You don't suppose he's going to try and seize Syria? Totally.
Well, what's interesting, Stuart, you know good and well that he's made the statement he wants a caliphate. And the only caliphate operating at the moment under the Islamic State is actually in the corner there of Iraq and Syria. So I don't know.
Wow. Well, has Putin said anything or build up of any troops other than what we know along Crimea and along that whole region? I know he was amassing a group of troops and equipment to possibly go into Ukraine, and so the speculation was something was coming, and we had all the ship movement. Have you heard any more about the ship movements in the Black Sea area?
We reported that, Wednesday night, and there has not been that much more about it. There is some images on the internet, news feeds that of the Russian armada that they've got, and actually it's in the Black Sea there, and they've got it off of Ukraine. And what's interesting is the added news from the Israeli News Live, talking about the Turkish Navy leaving port in darkness, not only under the cover of darkness, but even their ships didn't have lights on, which is really interesting. And they are reportedly en route to the Black Sea. So it's kind of odd. Putin's being pretty silent right now in all of this area, and you don't know what he's thinking or really even what he's doing. Putin's got his hands in the Middle East big time right now. Matter of fact, Israel posted information today and said that some of the activities that Turkey and Russia have done together, and according with Iran kind of going along, has literally almost thrown the U.S. and Obama and his people out of the whole Middle East completely. It's almost like they don't even have a footprint anymore. And so it appears that you could say almost Russia really is running the Middle East to some degree, but Erdogan, he's on his own deal. Whatever his job is, it's kind of different from some of this is not working out real well.
Well, I guess the real flashpoint would be if NATO or Israel did a preemptive. Israel's well known for preemptive, and it took out some Russian troops or Russian equipment or a Russian air base, and we have that prophecy of the hooks in the jaws. And I've often thought, well, maybe it's treaties, but it might not necessarily be treaties, because if Netanyahu were to do it or Erdogan was to do it, and by mistake or however, then Putin would have the excuse. He did say when he was leaving Syria, well, I can be back in a couple of hours if things start to go south, which was kind of a threat I took. And they did leave their very advanced technology helicopters behind, and with their missile batteries and all of that, they could be there in a matter of an hour, probably, or two at the latest, with some major movement. So this thing could open up overnight. You could have a clash by accident, or you could have a clash by design. So,
well, and interestingly, Stuart, one of the things that is involved with Israel right now is, I've told you about the reports that they're prepared for a Golan war, that this has been building, and Iran's right in the middle of that, actually directing that, and they're prepared for that. Well, now Israel, the military has come out and said that they've got to plan within the next 6 months for a war with ISIS on the Egyptian Sinai border, which is southern. So you've really got a war that's about to start that could really, actually they're already firing back and forth, Israel and the Syrian side. This has not gone real hot yet, but they are doing that. And of course, you've got Hamas now every few days firing a missile. And of course, Hamas is connected already with the ISIS groups out of Sinai, and Iran is behind all of that. So you've got Israel looking at the big bad guy sitting off over in the corner there, Iran, and you've got two facilities that and recently, you know, we talked about the southern Iranian nuclear facility called Bushehr, yes. But also the Fordo, further closer to Tehran. You know, they've just began moving lots of the I believe it's the 200 or 300
missiles.
Russian, yes. You know, missiles, anti-air missiles around the Fordo area. And so, you know, you've got Israel looking at they know who's about to cause them to get hit. And will they preempt? You know, Israel's big on preemptive strikes. And so, you know, that could be a spark. I mean, you know, you've got Russians involved in Iran to the degree, I believe, both of those nuclear facilities, Russians are actually working there. And you've also got some, yes. Russian equipment, not a lot. Most of the Russian equipment seems to be in Syria right now and up in Armenia, which is same region. You know, so it may be an Israel move. And then again, you've got this guy that you almost want to call him a wild card in a way. I mean, you know, he's no Erdogan's Islamic. He's on his own. Whatever that is he's doing right now is really odd.
Well, in consideration with his marriage with Putin not very long ago, and now he's really kind of siding with NATO. Which side of the fence is this guy on? Now, we know from prophetic word that Turkey must and will go on the side of Russia, but we don't know exactly why that is. Would it be feasible that Russia might have some interest in getting into Turkey big time?
Well, you know, Turkey is really a pretty big hunk of NATO, actually, as far as the nuclear arsenal there, and we don't know really what's going on with that. But at the same time, you remember I can't remember, it seemed like it was one of the popes or somebody had that, they talked about, I think it was a Catholic prophecy about when the Russians bombed Constantinople, which was later named Istanbul, the capital of Turkey. You know, it makes you
right.
wonder, you know, Turkey and Putin, they're kind of like two kids on the block that fight. They don't really get along all that well, but they've got a common enemy, so they do work together some. But it almost makes you wonder, to get Turkey fully behind the Russian umbrella or under it, would Putin maybe have to bomb Istanbul before it's over? You know?
Or maybe have a regime change, as we love to do?
Yeah.
And, you know, this thing, well, of course, it's very intricate. I have an article here that's kind of interesting. I get your opinion on it. Syrian war, nothing to do with Daesh. It is an energy battle for future pipelines. And when we had Stan Deyo on, didn't he talk about the fact that he thought a lot of this was really over energy and pipelines and gas and oil supplies?
Well, you're exactly right, and there is movement. If you'll remember, the oil industry or the heating industry, the pipelines from Russia to Europe literally choke Europe to death because there is no other source. There is no other current source. And one of the things about that seemed to push a little bit on the situation with Israel was Israel's huge find of oil, you know, off the coast there. They've got it's actually almost, I believe it's a connection with maybe Greece. They're doing you know, drilling down in the Mediterranean, down in the Med, and they've hit like gold down there. And I'm talking about natural gas and oil. But at the same
yes.
time, they've also now found a massive amount of natural gas and oil under the Golan, of all places, you know.
Well, maybe that's part of it, then.
It could very well be part of it because Russia, you know, if you'll remember, Netanyahu made some trips to Moscow, and nobody could figure out what they were talking about. And it seems like they were talking about this energy situation that Putin wanted in with Netanyahu on this energy deal, and he also wanted to continue his control of Europe via his energy sources, the big pipelines and stuff that go through Ukraine, southern Ukraine, right. I believe it is. And he also wanted to stop, I think, a pipeline that Saudi Arabia was going to run to Europe, or try to. And so this thing's got a lot of dots to connect. I mean, this is a serious situation, and it's multifaceted. It's more than one reason for these happening. And at the same time, Stuart, with all of this mix going on, talking about energy, you've also got the rich men playing their cards, like George Soros and some of these others.
I know. This newspaper has some interesting things. It says, noting that the severest of clashes occur only in places of major pipelines or where new routes are planned to run. Hence, the newspaper says, the conflict is nothing more than a fight for the best positions to start the oil and gas supplies to Europe. So maybe this is what this is all about. As Stan kind of implied, particularly over the Golan, didn't he say that under the Golan they have some major energy supplies as well, I guess?
That's what he said.
Israel is, yeah. Huh. Wow. Well, I guess we just wait and see how that plays out. I know a lot of these wars do start over energy.
Well, interestingly, Stuart.
Yeah, go ahead.
I was just going to say, interestingly, Stuart, the find or the platform that and Israel has actually had to get ships to go out, to actually patrol their off Greece there, they're in the Med, the security of the energy that they're drilling, and they call it, the name of it is the Leviathan field. They call it the Leviathan. That's the name of that rig and all of that energy that they're doing out in the Mediterranean. And you're exactly right. Standeo said the find under the Golan Heights was massive. So now you've got other sources. Maybe it almost makes you wonder: could the hook in the jaws really be energy?
Yes, it could. That's kind of what I'm gleaning from some of these articles. That the hooks in the jaws could very well be energy. And if that's the case, they're fighting for money and control of the energy sources. Now, you remember when they were all talking about peak oil and the oil was going to run out, and it's later been proven, I think, conclusively that the oil fields are not, rotted dinosaurs and old vegetation. There's tons of oil under there, and that a lot of these wells that they said had run short are now being refilled. They're filling themselves.
Yeah.
So I don't know, but you could be absolutely right. The hooks in the jaws could very well be energy, and of course, energy at that point brings in the military. And the military, of course, brings in war. So, yeah, this is getting fascinating. And, as you said, extremely dangerous. Very dangerous. Did you see this headline? September 9, 2016, thousands of Russian troops rushed to the U.S. northern border and South America. Is this just disinformation, or is there something going on here?
Well, I don't think it's just totally disinformation, because there were reports of Russia moving forces down into their area there, that you could almost literally see off of Alaska and that region. And, of course, over the last few years, we've had the Russian military buildup in the Arctic, which to me is just phenomenal, And we've had the Russian movements we talked about before off like Norway and that area, where Russia took over that base, that old NATO base or old U.S. NATO base. And I tell you what, there's a lot of reports of Russian movement. Now, talking about, you brought up South America. There is a lot of information coming out of the UK and some reports like that indicating that there seems to be a buildup of, not only Russian, but Chinese, and people are saying, other than Chinese and Russian, which some people have indicated is Islamic, being moved into South America now. Now, who that is, we don't know. I do know that Dan Gordon was concerned about how very easy it is to get for any of the Islamic migrants or ISIS or any of them really to get to South America. That's not a big deal. You just basically land in Brazil or around Brazil. You pay some money that you've got for a fake passport, and you make your way towards America. And so Dan Gordon was really concerned about that, and I believe recently, the former general Michael Flynn has been talking and warning also that coming up out of South America, some countries in South America, and coming up through Mexico is Islamic unknowns, and people are very concerned. And our border, it is open. It is flat open. We're not. The Obama administration is making zero efforts to control it at all.
Yeah, of course, that's part of the prophecies against the United States, is that God himself was going to open the borders. Obviously, he's using Obama and the orders from that whole White House Islamic group that runs it now. So the Lord is using those people to keep the borders open, and it's very, very interesting when you look at pictures of who's coming across these borders. They would appear to be kind of mostly men. They seem to be in the 18, maybe 25-year-old. That appears to me to be a fifth-column military operation going on. And that's what the Bible prophet said. Jeremiah specifically said that the Lord said, I will fill Babylon, which is the United States, with men, with foreigners. And they will be used to rise up when the call is given, and they will destroy the infrastructure of our major cities, and we got a war going on. And maybe this is part of what, we talked about Jade Helm when that was going on, but maybe there's a whole lot more to the Jade Helm operations than we know. I do know that they tried to get a hold of Red Elk. You remember that?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
To find out where the invasions were going to be, because he saw in his vision all the areas of the invasion and where they were going to come in from. And I don't think he was too necessarily, he told me, he said, I did not use, how did he word it? Correct Christian language when they approached me on it. Because did they not ignore him pretty much? Yeah, they pretty well did. They already had laid out, I think. They already, see, it appears that they know this is coming. This invasion's been planned a long time. Matter of fact, you and I have talked, and I posted today, that me and you had talked a little bit of time travel, and that's what we're doing right now. If you go back in time a little bit, there was a preposition, and I believe it was Soviet Union material in Mexico to attack the United States years and years ago, and actually, and very few people realize that, but the Lord actually appears to have sent a hurricane backwards
into that peninsula
Yes,
area and flooded all the caverns that was loaded with gear, you know?
Well, this is the one thing they all forget. It's the God factor. You're not going to move until the Lord says, okay. Otherwise, he just frustrates. Yeah, he just frustrates everything they try to do because it is running on a time schedule, so he interferes from time to time to keep it on track, I guess. But it's an interesting article that this stuff coming up from Mexico, and the reason I wanted to talk about it a little bit is years and years and years ago, I don't know, probably 20, 25 years ago, we got a call from a nun who was operating along the southern border of the United States, kind of a halfway kind of a house or a help house for people coming across.
Uh-huh.
She claimed they showed her maps of where they were supposed to go, take up residence, blend themselves into the community, and when the call came, they were going to rise up. Well, of course, as you found out on those derailers, things don't always want to be heard in Washington.
Absolutely.
So you know, she was just kind of left out in the cold. But I remembered it so well because that's exactly what the prophets say. So we have had an infiltration of the United States, a fifth column operation going on, and they are probably embedded in most of our mid or bigger cities and maybe even the smaller towns, waiting for the call to rise up.
Let me run this by you because I probably never told you this, okay? And the reason I know about it is because I was involved in it. I was actually working as a investigator in Texas at the time of 9/11. You know, when we had the attack on the Twin Towers. I was actually working in northern Texas at the time, small area, rural basically, and we understood then. If you looked at who, almost immediately they began to show, who was doing this. I mean, who these guys were, and they were showing their faces, their names, the countries they were from, and a number of them were from Saudi Arabia, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, and there was all Islamics, and all of a sudden there seemed to be an influx. We began to have a big influx across the country of people coming into Texas, fleeing other states that were Islamic, that were trying to change their driver's license from the other states and get Texas driver's license. And of course, to me that was rather suspicious, okay? I mean, especially just a day or two after 9/11. Well, I called the FBI, and you know what the FBI told me?
I'm going to guess, but I'll let you tell me. Here again, the truth was not to be known. I was asked, well, why would you think there's anything suspicious about that? I said, did you overlook 9/11? It just happened a couple of days ago, and now we've got families of Islamics that are moving quickly to get a Texas driver's license, and where they're going down towards Houston, I don't know other than that. And they said, well, we can't think because they're, and this is what's so interesting, Stuart, that was in the days when you did profile, and it's almost like, all of the people involved in 911 were Islamic, and so if you reported to the FBI, some Islamic people are doing something really, really strange, and all of a sudden, and they're actually all on the move after 9/11, wouldn't you find that suspicious? Well, no, the FBI didn't find it suspicious at all and didn't even want the information or who they were. Yeah, I couldn't. One time we had a B-52 come over the house. I mean, he was right at treetop level. And he's flying down the valley into Menominee area. And it seemed very odd to me because the B-52s have what they call oil burner runs, or they did. And they normally have these routes all planned out, and they're practiced for the pilots on very low-level treetop entrance into places to avoid radar and whatnot. Well, anyway, I see this B-52. I would happen to be outside and just at treetop level. So I went in because I was concerned maybe he was in trouble because they didn't have any oil burner runs or anything like that. So I called the FBI in Eau Claire, and they more or less read me the riot act. So I said, well, okay, if you don't want to know, I won't call you again. But, it could have been a Russian Bear bomber. I suppose, Would they be interested in that? Probably not. There's something really gone wrong, with that.
I agree totally with you, Stuart. It's almost too like the feds, and I've always tried to work with them. It's like the feds, though. They don't want local law enforcement really to know anything. And, we even find now, as we're having things like San Bernardino and places like that occur, we're still finding, and I'm hearing it reported on the news, that the federal people are still not dropping intelligence down to the lower levels of law enforcement so they can be on guard or know what to look for. They're still not in agreement. And this began with the Bushes. The Bushes, George, Bush and them they did the very same thing. The data wasn't there.
Well, yeah, didn't that, I think a lot of things changed. They had a big makeover in law enforcement, particularly the feds, and it's a turf war. It seems to me like they're kind of infighting, and, there's an awful lot of stuff about 911 that the public is never going to know about, and they wouldn't believe it even if it was told them.
That's true.
Why tell them? It doesn't matter. Speaking about Russia again, this came from Sputnik News. Defense industry official told Russian media that the mass production of the RS-28 Samad intercontinental ballistic missiles, a new multi-warhead super heavy missile designed to defeat anti-missile systems, will be ready in 2018, 2 years ahead of schedule. This is even worse than Satan II, is it? I think.
I think, Stuart, that Putin really has had militarily in Russia everything on a fast track. They have been turning out military equipment and, new stuff. We were shocked. My understanding was that our intelligence agencies were shocked at some of the stuff Putin fielded in Syria when they began to go into Syria. And he's had it on a fast track producing this stuff.
Well, there's, here's another thing that might get Putin a little more than just a little upset. Probably most people don't know about this one either. Here's the headline: What's cooking? The alarming rise of U.S. biodefense labs all along Russia's borders. Concern in Russia is increasing over the growing number of hard-to-access, double-purpose medical laboratories financed by the U.S. Department of Defense appearing alongside its borders. They are researching biological weapons, indicating they are not entirely peaceful. A number of the U.S. Army Technical Escort Units, or escort units, demonstrates a hazmat suit as they show some of their response capabilities to chemical and biological operations in support of the U.S. Department of Defense. Well, what would be your reaction? Put yourself in Putin's shoes. We have all these biological laboratories going up along the border. What conclusion, as a detective for years, would you reach?
I would have to think that they were built for me. And since the George Bush, who originally started the the missile systems in, he wanted to put all the missile systems in along the Russian border there in Europe, and that didn't really work out, and it only happened in like one or two countries, and I would begin to think that the chemical weapons or the biological weapons set up were probably in lieu of the missiles, and they would be used against Russian troops.
That would be my guess. I mean, I'm a conspiracy-minded person, but if I saw a bunch of biological labs going up along my border, I would be a little suspicious. In fact, I might just decide to take them out. Preemptively just take them out, be done with it. Of course, the problem is, I guess, with some of these biological agents that they're fooling with and chemical agents, you can't necessarily do that without spreading it all over the place.
I think a nuke would.
Well, it would, a little suitcase nuke, which we understand are buried all over the United States, not necessarily buried, but located by Spetsnaz troops.
Putin he's got tactical nuclear weapons, missiles, and then he also has nukes. A good nuke would kill all of that, and probably everybody that's there too. But anyway, if you're going to have a war, I guess that's what war is. I don't know.
Yeah, it is. There's a lot of collateral damage in war. And, we seem to be okay with a lot of collateral damage when it comes to our cruise missile strikes, drone strikes. And like Obama says, you just never know when it's going to come to you. And everybody laughed. He wasn't kidding when he said that. You're just not going to know. Anyway, getting away from war and all that unpleasant stuff, but here's something that maybe people should know. It's bordering chaos. 14 billion in cargo stranded at sea. Crews are going crazy on Hanjin ghost ships. The fallout from last week's historic bankruptcy of one of the world's biggest shipping lines, Hanjin Shipping, continued with little resolution, with as much as $14 billion worth of cargo simply stranded at sea, according to the Wall Street Journal, sending cargo owners scurrying to try to recover their goods to get them to customers. Do the people realize what this could be for, what do we say, trickle effect or ripple effect?
Oh, I doubt if they do. I doubt if most general people in the country are even listening to that. But it's very serious, and it's really true.
Yeah. And, Obama has told us over and over again that we're recovering economically, so not to worry the way it goes. What else have you got? I know you wanted to talk about. There's a movie coming out. You said Frequency. I just watched Frequency the other night, and now you say there's another one coming out?
Yeah, they've got a even newer model of Frequency, same name, coming out, I believe, in October. I can't remember. I saw it the other day, an ad on it, and the interesting thing is they really look at the time ripple effect in this one. They didn't do that much in the original Frequency movie. We was more worried about keeping people in that family alive. and in this one, though, it appears from what I saw that this girl grows up and becomes a police detective, and she's got this radio that she makes contact with her deceased dad, who was a police officer and apparently framed by the bad guys back in as history went down, and then he died for some reason or was killed, I believe. But she makes contact with him on the radio, just like the original movie Frequency, and then begins to, because she finds out information that he was set up, that he wasn't a dirty cop, he was set up and framed and killed, she tries to begin to manipulate the past to change that But in doing that, surprising appearances of changes around her. When she changes one thing in the past, it changes lots of things around her, and you've got this. It's kind of odd. It's like a ripple effect, Stuart, like you were talking about with gravity waves.
Yeah, it makes you wonder just how much distortion and kind of overlapping can occur. I've often wondered if the past, we know the past still exists, we know the future, the present is here, and it immediately becomes the past, and we know the future exists. So if this is one kind of a ribbon type thing, and one kind of merges with the other. In other words, the ancient past, somehow the veils. Remember how Red Oak would say the veils are going to thin down to the point where you're going to be seeing very strange, anomalous things. Not just necessarily a portal, but a kind of a merging of the timelines. And there was I know you're down there in Oklahoma, that one of your friends down there had thought she saw I think it was a mastodon walking around her, and kind of went behind the barn, and she went out to look. There was nothing there, but she saw it.
That actually Stuart occurred in an area known as the Buffalo Mountains, where there are really strange anomalies. It's almost like up in the area around Heavener, but it's not. It's in another area. And more than one, that occurred to more than one that have, some have seen look like dinosaurs. There have been some that seen some kind of flying animal, like a pterodactyl, and some have seen strange creatures. And whether they're seeing through the veil or a time ripple, this is close to some people that that are also walk out on their property and literally hear voices like people in another dimension or something. They can hear them, but they can't see them.
Yeah, there's something, I don't think we understand time-space. I don't think we understand how it works, what keeps it in relatively normal activity, because there was an incident up in the area of Burlington, Vermont, where two ladies were shutting down their restaurant and saw, I don't know what you would call it, one of the ancient sea creatures kind of waddling down to the water and disappearing. Now, of course, you probably all heard of Champ and Nessie.
Yeah.
But I don't think we have any clue as to what actually exists down in the depths of the oceans. So are they watching this, or are we watching veils thinning that are not creating necessarily a portal or doorway, but a literal merging, so that they actually are seeing stuff? I remember my dad got involved in one of those. He got involved in a town that didn't exist. He said he got really spooked and really frightened and left it as soon as he could. And they went back later to find out the town didn't really exist. It had existed a long, long time ago. What are they seeing?
Yeah, it's almost, Stuart, like there's anomalies to where there's almost like where you can, like a step-through portal. You recently saw the movie Interstellar, which is, I highly recommend it to people to watch, because it's so interesting that the astronaut left and went on that mission, and through a portal with a black hole and actually ancient technology of some kind that had been set up. And he returned, and his daughter was about to die, and he was supposed to be 140 years old, but he was still looked like he did when he left. And do you know though that's really accurate, because I talked to Stan Deyo a number of times, and Stan Deyo said, number one, that when the astronauts leave Earth and leave the gravity of Earth behind, they age at a different rate than people on Earth age, literally, you know.
Yes, they
do.
Yeah.
You know, I know it's not as you know, dramatic. The aging is not, the division there of the aging is not as dramatic as the movie made, but Stan Deyo also talked to me in some conversations about the experiments that he looked at. Now, whether they're Black Project, military, or what, he wouldn't say, but he actually saw machines that men entered. I guess they were testing it, and when the men came out, after just a few minutes, the men had a beard, you know, long hair, facial hair. So they had aged considerably and quickly inside that machine, other than what they would have aged outside that machine. And Stan said there's a remarkable difference in time and space between the inside of what he calls the UFOs and the outside in our time space in the UFOs. They're different. And you even heard me ask him the remarkable question, could what looks like a round ball of light that's no bigger than a Volkswagen to us in our time space, a strange UFO craft, could inside that craft be remarkably greater in size and we not even know it? In other words, the time space inside the craft is different. And he said, absolutely, that's the truth.
Yeah, that's something Bob Lazar. You know, everybody thought Bob Lazar was lying. I recently saw an interview, and he said, I am so sorry I ever told the American people about what was going on in Area 51. But he mentioned that. He said that there was a ship that was very small, but when you went in it, it was huge. And you remember Dr. No, the British...
Oh, yes.
Well, that was a phone booth, and he'd get in the phone booth, and it was a mansion inside.
That's true. That's very, and you know, it makes you wonder, where did he get that information to make that movie? BBC, I believe it was, that created that.
I think Hollywood has fed all kinds of information, and that's why the movies are made the way they are. I think this is, you know, the rich men of the earth claim they are gentlemen. And as gentlemen, they must announce their plans. And they must reveal their secrets. So how do they do it? Through movies. That sort of thing. There's a saying that goes, if you see it on the screen, they say, it already happened by yesterday. In other words, whatever you see in the movies, they've already probably done it. So that's very, very fascinating, though. That how far along are we? Do we even know? I know Dr. Greer of the Disclosure Project claims that we can go faster than the speed of light. That's no problem anymore. We heard from the Camelot Project when they were interviewing Dr. Paul LaViolette about his gravity wave and the cosmic ray waves that are now headed very close to us. That's where they found an insider who claimed that they had traveled inward towards the core of the Milky Way and actually seen this thing coming. And you see, because it's invisible, but you see the effects.
Yeah.
It would be kind of like projecting a picture on a ripple of water, and it would all be kind of distorted. So do we have, you know, I was linking this back into the rapture of the church because of that guy in, where is he from? Belgium, I think. He's a mystic. and he said this wave was coming, and when it hit Earth, many, many people were going to vanish in an instant, in a twinkling of an eye. They wouldn't even be here.
Yeah, he's a mystic, but he was using biblical terminology, actually.
Yes, he was. And from what he said, if you cross-compare that with Dr. Paul LaViolette and his gravity wave and the cosmic radiation that's coming, you begin to wonder. Now, they said, this insider claimed, this wave, now this is very interesting, was going to hit between 2016 and 2017, was their guess. It travels basically at the speed of light. So when the Lord said, and by the way, did you notice how the word Jesus Christ was expunged on our last broadcast?
Yeah.
They don't like that word. Somebody doesn't.
That brings me up to another subject while we got a little time.
Yes.
There were some people that's really concerned about the possible takeover by the group from the UN of the Internet, and how that Obama is pushing it into their hands, basically, quick as he can. I believe September the 30th or October the 1st, they're supposed to actually make a transition. And a lot of people are concerned that they are going to stop getting any of like what you and I say on the Internet anymore, and it'll be so controlled they can't really hear anything but a mainstream report of news that's really nonsensical, basically, and non-truthful. They were wondering, and I've had some email from people, they say if something on the Internet changes, we lose contact on the Internet with the way you guys talk or do radio shows. Do you have any type of system set up to send out alerts or, printed or any other way? Have we thought about anything? And I've been thinking, Stuart, I don't have an answer yet, but I just want people to know that's asking. I'm considering any possible avenue of contact past as we do it now. In other words, when a change comes and we can no longer do it the way we're doing it now, we may have to adjust or adapt to the situation. What's your thoughts?
Well, I think you're absolutely right, and it'd have to be hard copy, and it'd probably have to be done through snail mail, which is not going to be an alert type thing that happens overnight. People are not used to snail mail; they're used to email. But if they're going to try and probably control a lot of this, and were you not? It seems to me I remember you saying something about that you were shown that the mail would be the last method of transmission of news.
Yeah, I was shown years ago, Stuart, and I'm talking years ago, when I was actually doing a physical newsletter, which, like you say, when I wrote it up, copied it, and got it sent out to everybody, it was already week-old information, and it was older time they got it and read it. But I was shown that the last means of communications in the end times would literally be the old snail mail system, especially in the United States. And not that it would be accurate, not that it would be perfect, not that it would be easy, but that would be the last way. And so I had thought, and I talked with you about maybe an alert letter, a physical letter that you mail with a stamp, and maybe the last means of communications that we have down the road. We know someday some of this is going to come to a stop.
Oh, yes. There's no question about that. Even the FCC is trying to get involved, and the only thing you can call it is censorship. And I was stunned when I listened to the last broadcast, and I mentioned that name that nobody likes, evidently, and it was expunged from broadcast, and the whole rest of the hour was perfect. And all of a sudden, when I use that name, that gets taken out, and this is censorship, and this is hatred, for the truth. And I don't know what else to tell people.
Yeah, it really goes back to what you've talked about so many times. It's the classic Psalm 2 war that nobody talks and Psalm 2 is still in the Bible, as far as I know. They haven't taken it out, and a ripple in time or space hadn't moved it yet or replaced it. So, but it is the Psalm 2 war. You and I both don't even know exactly when that started, but it started back with Lucifer a long time ago, and maybe on in a solar system far, far away, like Star Wars says. But this has been going on a long, long time, and we're finally reaching the point again. It seems here on planet Earth that they are going to control that name. They've tried everything they can to erase the name Jesus Christ completely from everything. And now we're seeing it censored, and it is, Stuart. You're exactly right. Censorship is really kicking into a higher gear.
Yeah, it's going on YouTube and everywhere else. But I guess, they should read their Bible. I know they hate that book, but they really ought to read the last chapter, and they ought to read where every knee shall bow. Every knee is going to bow to that name. So they can expunge it, censor it, attempt to destroy it all they want. It's not going to work at the end because it's spiritual, and that is out of their control. They can only do so much. Like, Satan is a great replicator, but he has to use technology to do it.
That's right.
So, at least here, anyway. So that was kind of interesting that happened on our last broadcast, and hopefully it doesn't happen again. But I don't know. I don't know what happened. That itself could have been a spiritual attack. I don't think people realize when you run a ministry like you do and like I do, I don't think people would believe what we go through.
No.
And the attacks and the glitches and the destruction of equipment and all of that is virtually a daily event. And I don't know if people really believe it because they don't do the fighting. I've got something here. Have you got anything else you want to bring up?
Oh, go ahead. Go ahead with what you got. I was just going to mention.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to mention while we were talking about time a little bit. There's been some, you remember the old John Titor name on, George Noory, Art Bell, Coast to Coast, talking about time travel, etc. And how many people really got linked into that? Well, recently, George Noory's had a new guest on. He calls himself John Titor II. And he literally comes out now. I'm not asking anybody to believe this, but I just wanted to add it in there while we're talking about, time travel and et cetera. This John Titor II claims that he is literally a hybrid. He's not actually, totally human. He's a hybrid, and he says that a lot of the time travel experiments that we've used in the machinery or the technology that's been used literally came from the Greys. And so I find that fascinating, and of course, that's out there, and I'm not asking anybody to believe that a bit, but it seems more and more time and space seem to be cropping up, not only in movies and books, but literally in the whistleblower language or lingo that's out there, and I suppose the bots too, but I haven't read it in them, but I would not be surprised. I know that Barry Rothman's Torah codes, Stuart, do center around time travel and the word alien gods and et cetera, et cetera. So it's almost looking back, into the past that we have before us again, same situations.
Well, what's interesting is that the bots, evidently for what they say, and I think this is almost the same thing as remote viewing. They claim, do they not, in remote viewing that they're sort of tapping into a universal consciousness.
Yes.
And that's part of their ability to travel and view things.
That's true.
Is that correct? So that's what the bots talk about. They say they are going into the universal consciousness, and that is how they see the trends, the language changes, and therefore through those language changes they can, practically read the future. The only problem they all have, and that even as remote viewing, is the timing of it.
Yeah.
So now let's talk about. Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to mention that's interesting, Stuart, because when you see the remote viewers actually work, it's almost like they see through a glass darker than what we see through the glass. We may see through the glass darkly, but we seem to get more clear evidence and information prophetically than they do using their means, and it's like they're very, very limited. They only get little pieces of the puzzle, nothing near to what, like the Book of Revelation or any of these others, the Book of Daniel, et cetera, et cetera.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, of course, biblical prophecy is 100% accurate 100% of the time, and if you folks out there really don't believe it, it's actually true, and the reason it's true is because God sits outside of time and space. He's seen the whole thing go down. I am Alpha and Omega, the beginning and the end. I know what's going to happen because I've already seen it happen. So he gives it to the prophets who then write it down and put it in the Bible. And that is why it's 100% accurate, because it's actually what happened in the future to us. So all of the prophecies against the United States, Babylon the Great, are coming true right in this country with 100% accuracy, and they're going to continue to do so. And that's why we're looking at Isaiah 17, Ezekiel 38, 39, and Putin and what's going on in the Middle East. We know from the prophecies this thing is going to explode. So anyway, the headline I wanted to get to was World at the Brink of Disaster. Horrifying sequence of events could lead to millions of Americans dead and the U.S. in total ruins if Hillary has her way. They're talking about this threat that she has made with Putin. And if I remember right, didn't Putin himself say that if Hillary was elected, it meant world war?
Putin said that if Obama stayed, it was world war, and if Hillary was elected, it was war. And, nuclear war.
And if Trump is elected, what is supposed to happen? Nobody knows.
He basically calls Trump a genius, and the way Trump talks, they appear to be willing to work together. But, you're exactly right. That threat you're talking about, absolutely, that did happen.
So that goes along with Putin's irreversible slide towards a nuclear war or world war. So it looks like we are looking down the barrel of this thing going off anytime. We're coming up on 9/11. When is that, Sunday? And then the other date we all should be watching would be 9/23 or thereabouts. If the Lord, let's say the rapture of the church, I know everybody argues over when this is going to be, but let's just speculate that it's in 2017, as the Omega Code points to and as other things point to. In September 23rd, 2017, the star sign that is outlined in Revelation occurs. And it's the only time it does occur, is on the Feast of Trumpets. And then we have the Great Red Dragon coming in, which obviously is a destroyer. Have you heard any more on the destroyer at all? Larry?
No, it since Ed Dame's release and some of those that have agreed with what he said, and of course the Torah codes, they're very interesting because the Torah codes are basically centering around 2016, 2017, and 2017 and 2018 talking about Messiah, a lot about Messiah. So you don't really know how to connect all those dots, except that I do know a lot of the Torah code information coming out about Messiah they're not releasing yet. We're watching.
Yeah, this they've got to know. This is all tied together with the vast labyrinth of underground tunnels and cities and Jade Helm and the inbound of the destroyer. Remember when the Lord was crucified, the sun went out or was blocked by a solar eclipse that lasted for 3 hours. Now, a standard eclipse only takes a little over 7 minutes. So that was obviously a supernatural event. But almost all of these events are, in fact, astronomical in nature. And there's a guy put something out on YouTube, and I don't have it in front of me, but it was very, very interesting, that possibly a space body, perhaps a destroyer or the Great Red Dragon, went between the Earth and the Sun. And because it's so big, it took 3 hours to go through it. And he goes back into Genesis, and they find the same sign that we're supposed to have in 2017. And what was really interesting to me, you'd get a kick out of this one, the destroyer, or one of the bodies that are with it, its bridal party, so to speak, hits the bottom part of Jupiter.
Oh.
And he relates that back to the Genesis promise that the Lord would bruise the heel, or no, the destroyer would bruise the heel, but how did that work? I think you know the one I'm talking about. Bruise the heel, but he would destroy the head.
Oh. Huh.
And putting that into astronomical terms, because the Great Red Dragon is obviously Satan in the heavens. So when you're looking at something in the heavens, you're looking at a physical manifestation of something that's going on spiritually. So it hits Jupiter at the bottom, or hurting the heel, because Jupiter represents the king of the planets. Or we could say the Lord. So he relates that back, and it's very, very interesting. Guess when that occurs? Just after the star sign in December 17, 2017.
Wow.
So this is, we're getting closer all the time, and I think all the events that are going on the planet are really, really looking at that. Something is going on all over the world. You mentioned a big earthquake that took place off New Zealand again.
Yeah, they had a 6.1 off New Zealand this morning, and Deos, who have started their news back up again on their website, standeo.com, they've got a headline that says Rapio volcano on the North Island of New Zealand is now heating up fast. In other words, it's accelerating its heating. And we're talking about Taupo, the Taupo caldera there that Stan saw erupt and had that experience. And this is a very dangerous. You know, the Taupo caldera is somewhat like Yellowstone is to America.
Yes. That would ultimately encircle the entire Earth because of the prevailing high-level winds. Because if that blew, as he's indicated he saw in the vision, that would be a mess. And I see an article here, concern grows that a megaquake is going to hit the middle of the United States, and they're relating it directly back to you guys down there Oklahoma way.
Well,
Did you know that Oklahoma absolutely shattered their yearly record for earthquakes in 2015 and are en route to break it again this year?
Well, did you know, Stuart, that I think it was this morning they changed the 5.6 or 5.7 to a 5.8 that hit Oklahoma a few days ago, and now they say it is the strongest that has ever been recorded in Oklahoma, a 5.8 magnitude earthquake, and they're really watching that. We had a 4 today in central Oklahoma and had some 3s up in northern Oklahoma, so it's not stopped.
Well, this article is very interesting because on August 24th, it says 8 states are taking part in a multi-state disaster drill on Wednesday. So this has already evidently gone by, but just gone by. Missouri, Kansas, Nebraska, Iowa, Illinois, Tennessee, Kentucky, and Arkansas all took part in the Show Me Mass Care exercise to practice how they will react during a major earthquake along the New Madrid fault line. That vision you had and the vision your wife had about a major quake, It seems like if you're getting up into the 5.6, 5.76 range, as we mentioned before, is probably not fracking, right?
No, it's too deep. It's too the quakes are too big, and some of it's too deep for fracking. And they are talking, though, that they believe they've located deep fractures under this region. In other words, from Kansas down through Oklahoma, all the way probably to the Gulf of Mexico. Deep fractures, and all of this would set up for a major movement someday in this region. And we are pretty much the center of the United States, basically. And I've often said when we try to break Israel in two or Jerusalem, split Jerusalem, I heard America snap like a dry twig.
Yeah, it would be fairly quick, and a lot of people are not aware that we have a mid-continent rift, the largest, they say, in the world that never turned into an ocean. And you remember 10.5 apocalypse and how that all came down through all the way to the Gulf. And, of course, the prophets say that as well, that, the Navy maps all say the same thing, and the seers, the mystics are all saying that the United States is going to get split in half. So, Anyway, how do people get a hold of you, Larry, for the new listeners?
Well, currently the best way is just go to my blog, LarryWTaylor.org. That's LarryWTaylor.org, and read the data. Keep up with me through that, and you can email me through that or reply.
Okay, very good. Well, thanks an awful lot for coming on board. Getting back to this snail mail, if people want a newsletter of some sort when things start to go south, you're going to have to start sending your actual real address, because snail mail doesn't work the way email does. Anyway, thanks a lot, Larry, for coming on board. Appreciate it a lot.
Thanks, Stuart.
Okay, and for the rest of the listeners here, this is all very, very real, and it is coming down. And it's coming down, I think, much faster than people realize, and we really appreciate all the listeners that are coming on. And I guess we have to say good night because we're coming up at the end. So good night, everybody, and thanks for listening.